So I often hear about the climate crisis or the biodiversity collapse or the mental health crisis. All of these are symptoms of what we could first call a polycrisis. You work together as an organization to open a pathway toward a future that's desirable and sustainable. Because at the moment, I feel we are on a pathway toward a disaster. No, that understanding is not there. This is why I'm investing my life at this stage into this, because I see that this is vital for the human species. Sustainable transition is unavoidable. What is unsustainable either evolve to become sustainable or collapses to become sustainable.
In this episode, I speak with Benjamin Casteillo. Benjamin is a global sustainability expert who left behind a thriving corporate career to fully focus on solving the urgent sustainability challenges of our time. By employing a systemic transdisciplinary approach, he has uncovered groundbreaking insights that address the root causes of our global crisis. Through New World Together, he is dedicated to sharing this knowledge via conferences, workshops, and training programs. His mission is to equip individuals and organizations with the tools they need to actively shape a future that is both sustainable and desirable. Enjoy the conversation. Maybe just one thing. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a like or a comment at the end, or subscribe to our channel. It will help us to reach more people, invite more interesting guests that talk about more interesting topics. Thank you very much and enjoy the episode. Welcome in the Awake Insights, Benjamin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's good to see you again. I remember that we did a podcast a few years ago, which was mostly dedicated to the same topic, I think. But in the meantime, you made a huge evolution in the knowledge and the expertise that you gained around this. So maybe let's start by explaining the audience what New World Together, what that means to you.
New World Together is an organization to open a pathway toward a future that's desirable and sustainable. Because at the moment, I feel we are on a pathway toward a disaster. And how we do that, we try to bring awareness on the reason why we function in a way that is self-destructive, so that we can recalibrate it. Because what we've learned is that the mechanism that makes us function in self-destructive ways are unconscious, and until they are made conscious, they cannot be addressed and recalibrated.
And okay, so you're talking about consciousness. Who are the people that in the world should be more conscious to change the world? And maybe the answer is, yeah, everybody should be more conscious, but that's not possible in one time. So who are the people you think that should be more conscious to avoid the quite destructive future that you predict for our society and our world?
So just first to precise, I don't predict a certain future. I anticipate different futures based on different directions that we take as a species. So for now, of course, if we keep the same direction,
exactly.
Yes, the future that I predict is not unviable. But I also would like to precise that there are different forms of this future. It could take the form of a collapse of global civilization. It could also take the form of a dystopia. Both of them, for me, are completely undesirable. So that was I just wanted to precise that. I think for now, the people who, of course, everybody is called to become more conscious, but not everybody is in a position to do it. And I think the people who are in a position to do it are the people who realize that specifically we are not heading in the right direction, and that are willing to understand why. if if people are not concerned about that, I think it will be very difficult for them to, or very unnatural or uncomfortable for them to dive into the deeper roots of the problem because they haven't acknowledged the problem yet, very simply.
Can you maybe give some clarity about the problems that you see more specifically?
Sure. I like to call it a metacrisis, but I will explain this term. So what we are facing, a lot of people tend to see it from a silo vision. So I often hear about the climate crisis or the biodiversity collapse or the mental health crisis. All of these are symptoms of what we could first call a polycrisis. And these issues, whether they are social, ecological, economic, psychological, or political, they are deeply interrelated. And so these interrelated wicked problems is what we call the polycrisis. Now the metacrisis had two more aspects to it. The first is the crisis of meaning that stem from facing the polycrisis, because we realize that a lot of the things that we are doing are not making any sense in that context. And also the psychological ordeal that one has to go through, because facing such an overwhelming situation is also psychologically challenging, which means potentially emotionally and mentally overwhelming. So the combination of all these aspects, the combination of wicked problems on the outside and the the impact it has on the inside, is what I define as the meta crisis. And so to me, what we are facing as a species is a meta crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of wicked problems that are generating a profound discomfort, and a crisis of meaning at a collective level,
Yeah.
and which not many people have acknowledged at this stage, but that is still there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you did a lot of research around these different kind of topics, and there are a lot of things we can go deeper into and tackle on. I'm just curious. Can you maybe explain very briefly how we ended up here? Like, how is it possible that we as a human being, I believe, on our core, we always want the best for ourselves, but we are now in this kind of situation, as you say. If we continue the way that things are moving right now, or what we are doing right now, we're not going in the right direction. We are going to destroy ourselves. So how did we end up in this situation like this?
No, I think we end up for very logical reasons in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very good documentary that I watched recently on Netflix, which is called Chimp Empire. And chimp empires describe the behavior of primates in the wild. And if you look at their behavior, they fight for power, they fight for resources, they fight for status. Chimps is the mammals that share the most in common with us human beings.
Mm-hmm.
These patterns of fighting for power, resources, or status are simply primal survival patterns. Now, for chimps who are living in the jungle, the level of destruction that they imply is limited, is contained.
Mm.
But for a species like ours, who has an advanced intelligence to some extent
Mm-hmm.
and very powerful technologies, it is starting to become self-destructive. So in a way, why we are in that situation is because we have a primal survival instinct that has become predominant on the surface of the globe, which is completely unfit for purpose and unfit to be combined with exponentially more powerful technologies. And so, in a way, what is happening with the human species is what will happen if you give a loaded gun and a grenade to a 5 years old. It doesn't have the level of consciousness to make a safe use of such destructive weapons. It's basically, in a nutshell, what is happening with the human species. Too much technology, not enough consciousness.
Since the launch of this podcast, I haven't really introduced the True Impact Club yet. Are you looking to expand your network with other well-being entrepreneurs? Or you want to gain valuable insights into industry trends, business strategies, or sales and marketing? Or maybe you're looking for potential collaborations to grow together with like-minded entrepreneurs. If so, the True Impact Club might be perfect for you. It's a community where we meet bi-weekly to share our stories and journeys. Are you interested in joining? Just visit trueimpactclub.com to find all resources you need to become a member of the community. Thank you, and let's continue the conversation. Yeah. If that's true, what you're saying, that makes me a little bit more afraid, actually. If you see what's happening right now, the AI that is now, a technology that is more and more integrating and implemented in our society, in the world, which has, a pace that no other technology had before. How do you look at that, actually? If we were already not ready with the technology that we already were using for a few years, and now we have AI, so now we're entering like a new decade. How do you look at that?
Well, I'm looking at it as we are accelerating towards a breaking point. This is where we tend to dive into, again, silo vision. And just for example, some people will only focus on AI and will only speak about AI risk. And some people will only focus on climate change and will only talk about the risk induced by climate change. And other will talk about, I don't know, growing social inequalities or things like this. No, all these issues are interrelated. No, that's might sound like a bad news, but to me, it's a good news. Because not only they are interrelated, but they share the same roots.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we've not dealt effectively with them until now is that we've ignored the deeper roots. We've been, as a species, when I say we, I'm talking about us, the human species, and our globalized civilization, our change makers, of people who've been trying to address this problem, have predominantly been addressing this problem in silos, often in competition with one another, because organizations who are dealing with climate change are in competition for attention and funds with organizations that are dealing with biodiversity collapse or other organizations that are dealing with poverty. And so because of that, we've been very inefficient. It's a bit like if we were trying to do, imagine you had, I'm going to use this metaphor. Imagine there is a patient with a terminal illness. And we can still heal that illness, but right now we haven't even placed the proper diagnosis. And so we are doing symptom treatment. And some of the symptoms include headache, fever, skin rash, sore throat. And so there's a specialist for headache that's giving him like the pills for the patient to be able to deal with the headache. There's a skin specialist for a skin problem, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But they haven't diagnosed the terminal illness. And so the overall condition of the patient is decreasing. Now, so what I'm saying here is that, and at least this is my conviction today, and the more I dive in this subject, and the more I am convinced, the one of the core problems is we haven't collectively recognized the root causes of our predicament, and we are ineffectively doing symptom treatments in silos. Now, why is this a good news? Because if we address the deeper roots of our predicament, then we can act on all the issues at the same time. That's the first point. Second, we can also turn this meta crisis into a meta opportunity for the human species. Now, doing so requires us to do something that we are very bad at this stage because of our current level of consciousness. And that means looking at ourselves, looking inside ourselves to identify what is driving us, not only individually, but collectively.
So yeah, you're talking about the root causes, and yeah, that's the foundation where everything starts. What comes up in me is actually a mindset shift, it's psychology, and then you mentioned consciousness. So can you explain a little bit more what are the root causes for you, and how you believe we can increase the level of consciousness to tackle those root causes and go into the right direction?
I will start the response with a quote from Carl Gustav Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I love it so much that I have made another quote out of it, of my own,
Yeah.
which is, until we make the collective unconscious conscious, it will drive our civilization toward collapse, and we will call it unchangeable human nature. So the problem we have is a problem with the way we think and the way we behave. And the dysfunctional patterns that we have inherited stem from a primal survival instinct that's not fit for purpose. This primal survival instinct, to understand it, it's important to take a step back. And here I'm going to speak about global history, the history of humanity, and which danger we faced as a species, and what we did in order to survive, and what did work best to maximize our chances of survival. Can you think of one of the things that has killed us all over the globe, no matter where we are? Can you think of a common danger that we faced as a species?
Well, the thing that comes up in me are the dinosaurs. Like
Yeah, the
what killed
dinosaurs.
the dinosaurs, but then there were no human yet, right?
No, but if you think dinosaurs, I mean, basically you're thinking apex predators, right?
Yeah.
So I think we were not living on Earth at the same time,
No.
but basically we've been dealing with predators.
Yeah.
So we've been dealing with mammals that were physically much more powerful than us.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with rivals. We've been dealing with illnesses. So basically, our ancestors have evolved into an environment that could easily be perceived as hostile. Right? Stuff that is outside but wants to go inside and it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Right? So how did we learn to first we learned to fear that danger, but how did we learn to overcome it? Is by cultivating power, a power of dominance, in order to control the external environment, which was perceived as a threat. So that's how we develop weapons. That's how vaccines, for example, and all this kind of stuff. It's all about protecting our physical integrity.
Yeah.
No, the problem is that we have is that when we strive for control and domination of the external world, we find ourselves in competitions with others who are doing the same. And so that perpetuates what we are trying to deal with, which is the danger of hostility. And so our species has also created social structures, systems of society based on this primal survival impulse of dominations. Nations. We defense for and these nations are also in competition with one another
Yeah.
for the domination of the surface of the globe when they have the mean for it. For example, we could think about Russia, China, the US, Europe, etc. So basically, we found ourselves, that's one of the primal mechanisms, by the way. So that's, to me, what I consider as the primal response to danger and fear of hostility, which is a primal impulse of domination and control. And it's going to create rivalries for power. And it's going to self-perpetuate. Now, another thing that has killed us a lot is the danger of scarcity.
Yeah.
the danger of not having enough. And particularly in certain parts of the world where resources were not abundant, or where rivalries between different tribes means that they were also competing for resources to fight each other. So here, one of the places where we've been very involved into that is Western Europe. So what happened, what the primal impulse for compensating for the fear of not having enough is an impulse to accumulate always more. And that just create competition for resources and inequalities on one side and depletion of resources on the other. And one of the last impulse that has become dangerously self-destructive for us as a species is stemming from the fear of being separated from the group, of being rejected from the group. We humans, we thrive when we are together. For those who don't believe me, just imagine if you were to remove everything on you and around you except what you build, extracted and built from your own hands. I don't know for you, but me, I know will be naked in the jungle, and I guess it will be the same for you. So we thrive out of collaboration and togetherness. So we fear being isolated from the group. And the primal impulse that comes to deal with that fear of being rejected is an impulse of conformism. Is basically seeking for external validation, often at the price of our own authenticity. And when we reject the authenticity inside, very often we also reject it outside, and that creates tribalism, group identities, and is gonna, for a consequence, reinforce the paradigm of separation. And so when we have these primal impulses of domination, accumulation, and conformism, and we had exponential tech on it, what we end up with, what we find ourselves with, is weapons of mass destruction, an overshoot of social and ecological limits, and a level of social engineering that could leave us obsolete as a species. And so what is happening to us is the logical outcome of how we learn to survive as a species. No, the problem that we have, or one of the main problems that we have, is that these primal survival mechanisms have been labeled as unchangeable human nature. They are not. And so the first thing that I would like to point is this primal survival mechanism. Know why we don't see this primal survival mechanism for what they are, which mean outdated programming that is collective. It's because we have placed on top of them limiting beliefs about what is human nature, what is success, what is power, what is progress. And so, for example, such limiting belief says that progress is measured by how much your economy grows and how much money you've been placing in your bank account. That's a limiting belief that is rooted in the impulse of accumulation, but it rationalizes it rather than addressing it. So there are limiting beliefs, of course. These primal mechanisms are rooted in fears. And no, what I did not mention before, and I will stop after, because that will be quite a load of information, is that they're also rooted in traumas that are collective and intergenerational. Because what has killed us repeatedly has also traumatized us
I was going
repeatedly.
to go in that direction, actually, because everything that you mentioned, I recognize that on a personal level. It's what we know as symptoms of traumas. So, and from what we learn about trauma, then we know actually on a personal level, there are ways to heal traumas. And how the way you look at it is like, this is a collective trauma. This is the consequence of, most part of humanity that is traumatized, which has an impact mostly in people that are in power, and they rule or control the world in a kind of way. And that brings us in the situation that we are in today.
Absolutely.
And also at the same time, when you were explaining everything about the power and the weaponization, I feel now, if I follow everything that's going on in the world today, that we are at a critical point again, or a turning point, or a transition, or something. I don't know how to call it, but we reach a certain level at the moment. If we're looking at the wars that are happening right now, American elections are coming up. You see that the powers in the world are moving and trying to change things, and it can go wrong very quickly. That's how I feel it. Like we're at a point that it can go wrong very quickly. So can you maybe explain a little bit your opinion about, if you look at the news right now from many different sources, hopefully, what is going on in the world today? And it's maybe hard to make predictions, but just try to make a sense of it, and maybe also what it could be and maybe what not. Hey, just a quick note from our sponsor, True Impact Agency. If you want to set up marketing funnels, create landing pages, or start advertising campaigns, they have years of experience offering these kind of marketing services. You can just get in touch with them through the website, through impactagency.com, and there's also a free ebook for you to download, where you can learn how to turn quality leads into paying customers. Thank you very much, and let's continue the episode.
The first point is what we see in the news right now is, in a way, an external manifestation of the primal impulses I described before. The conflict happening in Palestine is an expression of that. It's another manifestation of unresolved collective traumas on both sides. The same with the conflict happening in Ukraine. The same with all the other issues that we are facing. What we observe, and I think what makes this time of our human history very special, is that we can all feel that we are approaching a breaking point. We all feel that a big change is upon us. And the way I see it is the change is unavoidable. The sustainable transition is unavoidable. What is unsustainable either evolve to become sustainable or collapses to become sustainable. And that's the same for our globalized civilization. So right now, it has pushed the limits, and it is feeling more and more that it is out of balance. And most people, if not all people I talk to, feel that. Now, what will make, I think, a major difference is our ability to understand where we are and why we are where we are. Because that, in a way, will give us very clearly the direction that we need to take. No, that understanding is not there. This is why I'm investing my life at this stage into this, because I see that this is vital for the human species. So right now, there's a collective lack of awareness about our predicament. And I'm not saying that people are not necessarily aware that we are not going in the right direction, but they don't necessarily have the level of clarity and empowerment that will give them an agency to make a difference. I was just discussing with a CEO today, and he said, "Benjamin, I know you are right, but it's really hard because we are entangled in this constant competitive and confrontational environment. So in a way, we are trapped in our own matrix, in our own hamster wheel, and it's an hamster wheel of our own making. And the only way we can stop it, because that's a zero-sum game, It's a game where we all need to stop playing, but if one stops playing before the other, is
Yeah.
find himself excluded and marginalized. And so what we need is a collective consciousness awakening. But at this stage, we are very far from it because we are lacking the mental and emotional maturity to face the reality, the disturbing parts of reality outside of ourselves, and what they are mirroring inside of ourselves, which mean our false and limiting beliefs, or inherited fears and traumas, which we have not even started to recognize at
Yeah,
the
for
collective
me,
level.
I see a big contradictory here, and that's because the world lives in cycles. So when we come out of decades where we had it really good, after the World War, industrialization, we build a lot of prosperity, and when things are good, then nobody is forecasting what's going to happen in the future, is going to prepare, knowing that it not always will be good, and people take as much as they can from these good times. And then when things are going in another direction, that we see, yeah, we cannot sustain this, crises are coming. And then what happens with people, instead of finding solutions, working together, they are going back in the survival mode. And then they're gonna distance themselves, isolate themselves, going in protection modes, protect themselves, their family, their country, the part of the world. And also then that's not a way to find a solution. And that's almost a recipe for destruction in a sense. So I understand what you say, and that it really lies in the root cause again. Also, what I understood from what you said is, if you look at personal level, because I never studied collective trauma, and you did that in the past 2 years, but I feel it's a reflection of personal trauma. Because if we talk about all the symptoms that we can have as a person, and we learn from that it's something that happened in our childhood, that we didn't process very well, and we can learn how to process that in a better way, and heal all these things that are suppressed in our body. The moment for people to realize that, to awaken, to increase that level of consciousness, most of the times something really bad needs to happen. It's the rock bottom philosophy, right? Is that also the same on the collective? That's my question. And is there a way to avoid that? Because rock bottom on a personal level, it's very different on a collective level. Than I think about wars, destruction, all this kind of stuff, right? How do you see that, and can you maybe give some examples about that as well?
Sure. Can you remind me that aspect if I forget? Because I would like to go back to a few things that
Okay.
you say, which I think are important. The first thing, and you mentioned that we had it really good over the past decades.
In the West.
That's true for us in the West, but we've not been in we've not been in the receiving end of that mega machine. And here I want to bring awareness to the ordeal that many indigenous who have been on the receiving end of that mega machine had to go through, because the trauma is also huge. There's been a lot of disappropriation. Their natural land that they were taking care of has been taken, often destroyed. So not everybody had it easy. We in the West had, because we've been using our military and technological power to our advantage. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing, you mentioned how indeed some people were becoming, in a way, more egoic, more nationalistic, more tribal, more aggressive as a result of the decaying paradigm. And you said it's almost a way for destruction. I will just slightly disagree. It's not almost. It is completely a way for destruction, right? And that's
Yeah.
what people need to understand. It's not realistic. That's the pathway toward disaster. And so this paradigm, who's becoming more tribal and primal, is signing its own death. It's gonna devour itself, and we can only help it to some extent, and that extent is how much it wants to be helped. No, what we can do, on the other hand, is building the foundations of the new emerging paradigm. And I think many actors and organizations are working on it. No, one of the things that we are missing is a global movement, is a global regenerative movement, because right now there's many emerging organizations and groups, but we are not yet officially recognized and officially recognizing ourselves as one global movement. So that one step we
There's
need
back
to
these
make in the near
silos that you
future.
mentioned before. It reminds me of that. Yeah. Yeah.
We're still in silos, right? Yes, of course, everything is in silos, and I mean, in a way, when what we were focusing on was performance, silos were very useful, because you don't need to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You can just focus on resolving that problem, and
And it's very effective.
the rest is for the commons.
Yeah.
No, we can't. Yeah, very effective. But the problem is that cultivating performance is not cultivating resilience. And now we are seeing the consequences of an excess of performance and a lack of resilience, pushing the limits and being on the verge of breakdown. So now that I've addressed these points, I'll happily dive into the subject that you mentioned, which is collective traumas. And you are absolutely right. But this is fundamental to a transition. And right now, probably our approach to traumas is like our society, too individualized. And so we can only go as far to heal our traumas as individuals, but without dealing with the collective traumas, that will be always very limited. It's almost like trying to detox yourself in a toxic environment. Yes, you can work on it dedicatedly on a daily basis, but you still get intoxicated. But it's the same with trying to heal our traumas in a traumatized environment, where we get constantly re-traumatized because people are in a dissociated state. So it's very important for healers, therapists, change makers to integrate the notions of collective traumas and collective trauma healing in their approach, if we want a chance to untap what we need to untap for a transition. Because if we remain in that collective traumatic state, we remain in that state of fragmentation, of dissociation, of separation. And that just feed the fear, that just feed the patterns that are driving us toward disaster. There's a book that has been written by a psychiatrist called Ansgar Rougemont. He called the title is called The Vampire Seed, and I love the description that he gave about the impact of trauma on human beings. And basically, what he explained is that it turned them into an archetype that is monstrous. And so he described 4 types of monsters as a consequence of that dissociated state. He speaks about dries and wet zombies, he speaks about vampires, and he speaks about werewolves. So I'm going to describe that, and that will help me also to give more insights about the impact of trauma. So the impact of unresolved traumas is living in a state of discomfort and anxiety. And that tends to generate patterns that want to numb the pain that we carry. So the dry zombies are people who simply numb their consciousness in order not to feel their pain. And so they're a bit dissociated, but they live a very normal life. They go to their job 9 to 5. They watch the news. They don't ask themselves questions. They have a very basic, normal life. But they basically numb their feelings, because if they were more connected to their feelings, they would feel the traumas that they are carrying and the traumas around them. Another type of zombies are the wet zombies, as described by Oscar Rougemont. So the wet zombies are the one who use substance to numb their feelings. So we have drug addicts, alcohol addicts, people who are suffering from really bad addictions. Basically, they feel, but they numb with substances and are generally heavily addicted to it. Now, the book is called The Vampirocene. The third archetype that Dr. Ansgar describes is the vampires. The vampires compensate for their inner discomfort by trying to have always more. They are billionaires chasing for the next purchase, chasing for the next hit. Right. And so it's called the vampirocene because our economy, our entire globalized civilization, is mainly driven by this archetype of vampire, this need to have always more, this addiction to growth, this addiction to consuming and having always more. And finally, the last archetype is for people who have integrated violence within their structure. The werewolves. These people can be normal when they are with their family, but they can also take weapons and kill in cold blood. And so collectively, if we take a look at the way our world works and our society works, these archetypes are everywhere, all around us, often in us as well. So that's the bad news. The good news is that if we start to heal, then we start to reconnect to ourselves, one another, and nature. We start to become truly human. And so the traumas are not only something that should be considered negative, they are almost like a pool of consciousness that is waiting to be untapped through a healing process. But right now, again, because we are in denial of our traumatic state and its implication, we are not tapping into this pool. We're basically perpetuating the cycle of traumas. And so it will take new approaches in order to deal with collective traumas. It's a collective process. But before this new approach can even be developed at scale, it will take collective trauma awareness. And that very first step to deal with our collective traumas is not fulfilled yet. We are very far to have a society that is collective trauma aware. And if we were, we will not see the narrative that we see on the news on a daily basis about who's the bad guy we need to fight, who's the evil that we need to destroy to make the world a better place. We will recognize the traumas that are driving our most destructive patterns. It doesn't mean we'll tolerate them all. It means that we could bring empathy in our response and also not only focus on the need to neutralize the threat, but also focus on the need to heal the trauma that is creating it in the first place.
Yeah, that's very well explained. A thing that came up in me is avoiding pain. That's what people do that have traumas, and all these archetypes you mentioned are also there to avoid pain. On the collective level, I think people do everything to avoid pain, developing technologies, empowering other places of the world, a lot of things. It's avoiding pain. So where lies the solution then? Is it finding ways to go through the pain and heal? We know it's more or less on a personal level, but how do you see that on a collective level?
So, I mean, I might not have a definite response because we are still looking for the way. And my experience has been we discover the path as we walk the path. So right now we are looking for that solution. But what I can tell is that a big part of the responsibility falls on those who can see clearly, those who have awareness in abundance and are able to share it. So in a way, these people are the pioneers of the
Are that people
regenerative
in power
transition.
that have the power to do this? No, exactly.
No, they're not in power. So, but it's not not being in power in our society doesn't mean being powerless, right? It means that at this stage we are not in power, but we are not powerless. For example, we can do this podcast today with you. Tomorrow, I will give a conference about the deeper roots of climate change webinar online. So I am not powerless. My power is limited because at this stage, I don't have the support of our political, economic, and institutional system for very simple reason. What I share is very subversive to these systems. And at this stage,
Yeah.
they are more afraid of what is subversive than they are of the collapse that they are heading toward, which is not rational. They should be more afraid of the collapse they are heading toward than about the knowledge that is subversive, but that will help them to deal it accordingly. So at this stage, this is where we are. So if I was to look at the stairs, reaching political, economic, and institutional power is the
Yeah.
last steps on the stairs. Right now, we are at the first, building communities, finding allies, finding businesses, influencers, people who are ready to support that process because they understand how vital it is. And so I think part of our job is also to
Yeah.
reach these people, to allow them to activate. And so it's happening right now. There's no certainty. And I will be delusional to tell you that it's all okay, we're going to make it, or it's all over, it's too late.
Yeah.
The game is being played as we speak. No, my philosophy is that the game is being played right now. If I want a chance at winning, I need to play it. Because
Yeah.
if I don't even play it, I am sure to lose it. And so we are moving forward every day, taking actions, trying to activate, to bring more awareness, activate more people. And yeah, progress are being made. Are there sufficient for us to be on the right direction at this stage? Certainly not. Are they helping to head us
Yeah.
toward the right direction? Certainly, yes.
Can you share with the audience what made you decide to do this work? Because in your bio, I read that you had a job in corporates, you were quite successful. So, what made you decide to do this kind of work, and why is it so important for you specifically?
So I think the first answer is predisposition. As a child, I was thinking differently. I was already looking at the big picture, which was very uncomfortable to me because my friends were absolutely not looking at these kind of things and talking about these kind of things. So it made me feel very weird and as if something was wrong with me. And so I repressed that, but I still could feel that the society is not the way it should. And as I grew up, this predisposition kept being here. And so I kept being interested to understand how the world functioned and how the world is functioned. And I also and also had this growing feeling that not only the world is not the way it's supposed to be, but it is heading toward its own demise. And so that was very haunting. And I tried to repress all these feelings. I tried to focus on the corporate career that I was lucky to have in Bali with money, power, status and everything that comes with it. But the more I climbed the corporate ladder, the more it became obvious that I was part of a system that's driving itself toward collapse. And so the cognitive dissonance was huge. So it's not like I was particularly heroic, it's that I was dealing with so much cognitive dissonance that at some point it
Yeah.
became unsustainable for me, unbearable. So at that moment, when it became really unbearable, it was when I was at the peak of my career, because after I left it, but I was at the time, I had been a senior manager and had become an expert consultant. I had a lot of free time, a very good salary. I went to a meditative retreat trying to find inner peace. And as I dived into myself, well, I dived into all these big ideas very naturally. And suddenly it was not about inner peace anymore. It was about
Yeah.
finding keys for the human species to not self-terminate. And so that was the beginning of the journey, and that led me to quit my career, to take that leap of faith. And at the beginning, I truly didn't know what I was doing. It was a massive psychological, and I went through a very big psychological
Yeah.
ordeal for or at least 1 year and a half. And so that's what led me. It was in a way very naturally, and because I think I have predisposition for the work I am
Yeah.
doing.
Amazing. So, so can you describe how far you are into this right now? So you're doing this already for a few years. We met each other, I think it's 4 years ago. At that time, you were already into that for 1 or 2 years. I'm not sure actually. So can you explain a little? I mean, like New World Together, I guess, with the topics I searched for a longer time, as you explained. Um, can you explain where you believe that you're standing today? If we also talk about influence and the influence you can make to make the real change.
So first, it's very hard to measure objectively the impact of the expansion of consciousness. No, it's observable in many ways, but it's not measurable. It's not like I'm picking trash on the beach and I'm measuring how many kilos of trash have been picked. At least I do that, but it's not my main function. But what I can say is that at this stage, probably the first pre-COVID, when we started our work, I mean, we were aliens, and basically we had very little attention. We were also not really aware of what we were dealing with. We had a willingness to unite people around what is happening on the planet, but we didn't know what was standing on the path of unity. We had no awareness of these beliefs, fear, and traumas as we have today. Today, I will say that if I have to put the where New World Together is a very early stage, is a early adopter. No, I have to say, for me, New World Together has been a vehicle. I am also considering, to some extent, potentially to let it go at this stage, because what I had to learn and integrate through New World Together has been learned and integrated. But for now, I will say the
Yeah.
vehicle is still serving its purpose, so I keep it. There's
Okay.
a New World Together France also that has opened. So some people have seen the value of the work we do. Interestingly, they are
Yeah.
coming from more like popular movements. They decided to create a New World Together France, and this is also emerging. So it's hard to tell you. On my side, what I want to do is in a way professionalize my offer, officialize my offer as well through conference, workshops, and training programs, and do it in a much more open and official way. Because until now, I think I was more like beta testing and I wasn't really sure. I guess it took me a lot of time because this is such a
Yeah.
deep and important subject. I wanted to be sure that what I bring is qualitative,
Yeah.
because the last thing I want is to mislead people. So I'm at this stage, which is also transitional, with the vehicle New World Together that is still there, but I feel also that I will be ready to let it go and continue that journey on my own, but also having another branch of New World Together that has opened. So yeah, there will be, I think the coming months and the
Yeah.
coming year will be determining. Also, we started to work with companies. So that's also a big shift. So we start to have our
Okay.
first partnerships with companies with excellent feedbacks. In general, I cannot say that everybody is happy about what we have to share.
Mhm.
For some, it's still too disturbing and a bit difficult to digest, but we also have excellent feedbacks. So, yeah, at this stage, what I would say is it's a work in progress, but I see more recognition. And this increase of
Mhm.
recognition is due to two main factors. First, our ability to share the message has
Yeah.
greatly improved with the experience and the years. Second, the
Mm.
people receptiveness about the message that we
That's good.
share has also increased. And I think these two will continue increasing, which means the environment will be more and more proper for
Yeah.
the message
Yeah.
that we want to share to be heard.
No, that sounds amazing. And definitely these collaborations with corporates can create a lot of impact, I can imagine. Can you explain a little bit more precise what you offer if you collaborate with companies or with other parties? What is it? What is the concrete offer actually? What is the value that you can bring?
Sure. So first of all, we collaborate with people who are
Mhm.
serious about the global stability challenge and want to make a difference and understand that business as usual is not part of the solution. It's part of the problem. So we already like that's the first thing. For those people, first thing that we propose is an awareness conference. That for them to be able to integrate the holistic and transdisciplinary approach of our global stability challenge. So facing the meta crisis, having a first initiation of what the deeper root causes are
Mhm.
and what the solution will take. That's the first stage. Another thing that we propose for people who want maybe a more immersive experience into this knowledge and content is a collaborative workshop. So right now, for example, one of the workshops that we do on a regular basis is
Mhm.
the Conscious Evolution Collage, which basically it's a collaborative card game where people dive into all these contents using the cards. And the last, for people who want a deeper dive, is the training program. So I have like
Mhm.
an essential training program and a more advanced one. But basically, what it covers, it's the meta crisis, the primal, the underlying drivers, the deeper roots, the denial mechanism, the how we can collectively make sense of reality as a species, how we can claim our creative power because we are the co-creators of our societies, and in a way
Mhm.
we've always been co-creating our societies, but we
Mhm.
find ourselves trapped in it, which is not supposed to be the case. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to be trapped in a cage of your own creation. Also, like so, concepts such as integrating the principle of interconnectedness, and of course, how to untap the meta opportunity and how to find our place in this critical time of human history. Because in a way, I think we
Yeah.
are all being called by what is happening. And so, which role each and every one of us wants to
Yeah.
play is personal. And so basically, this is really to help people to enter that process of healing and consciousness expansion and what
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
to call psychological rehabilitation. And I'm going to explain that. I mean, if we are in the process of endangering ourselves out of technological progress, it's
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
have psychological problems. And we have psychological programs because we have a programming that's outdated and unfit for
Mhm.
purpose in our time. That's the programming of our ancestors. So, in a way, making this programming conscious and recalibrating is a
Yeah.
process of psychological rehabilitation. And so we help people to dive into this. And also we adapt based on the stage of where we are. For example, we had a collaboration with Bali Hotel Association, where it has been mainly about them, for example, integrating the principle of planetary limits and understanding the global challenge that we face, seeing a little bit more the bigger picture and how they can implement solution on the local scale, keeping in mind
Yeah.
the global
Yeah.
challenge and what is at stake.
Amazing. So yeah, I sense that, and I understand that you're making great steps into the right direction. If someone is watching that maybe can make a greater impact to you, to the projects that you're in, and accelerate the influence and everything, what kind of support can they give you?
I would say join our activities, dive into these subjects. But the first thing I want to say before that is probably a lot of the things I have heard are quite uncomfortable. Probably there is distinctly feeling this like, oh, okay, I would rather just play video games or go back on social media to watch something more relaxing, because this is a bit like too disturbing and too undigestible. My first thing is like a warning that don't push that back into the unconscious. We need to dive into this together. So my invitation first is be curious about the subjects. Be curious about the metacrisis and its implication. Be curious about its root causes. And if you don't like my French accent, the way I talk, look at other thinkers who are working on the subject. I'm thinking about Daniel Schmartenberger. I'm thinking about Thomas Hübel, Gabor Mate, and others, forward thinkers. If otherwise you're not too disturbed by my French accent and my approach, well, join one of our free webinars, join one of our workshops, see for yourselves, but don't be afraid to face our predicament, because it's this fear of facing our predicament that makes it unmanageable. And so if you truly want to be part of the solution, learn to not be afraid to face the problem. Be curious about understanding it. Be curious about who you are and how you could be part of the solution. Because we are 8 billion human beings more today. There are 8 billion human beings more ways to be part of the solution. So be curious about what's yours. And remember that we are in this together. Because we might be divided by beliefs and businesses and nations, but ultimately we remain on the same planet, part of the same human
Yeah.
species, sharing the same reality. And that's what we need to take care of. And that's
No, you're
teamwork.
totally
That's not a
right.
competitive game.
And it needs leadership, you know. It needs people that step up and don't stick their head in the sand. And it's a beautiful message that you share. Like, as soon as you understand really what's going on, it's a matter of making your own choice and decide actually to be a part of the solution, and step up and share and spread the message as much as you can. Don't try to avoid the pain as maybe you did already for most part of your life, and look at what is on the other side and understand what is on the other side of the pain, which is much more beautiful than sometimes the situation we are in today. So yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that.
So if I may just
Sure, yeah.
if I may complete just to that, because you say things that are very important. Recognizing the pain is giving a chance for the
Yeah.
process of healing to take place. Acknowledging the pain is acknowledging the trauma, is giving a chance for the process of healing to take place. So let's not be afraid to recognize our wounds. We all carry wounds because our
Yeah.
past history has been super traumatic, and our present reality is still super traumatic. And so, if we continue to put our heads in the sand and pretend that everything is okay, that we are not being touched, we continue to numb ourselves and to separate ourselves from ourselves, from one another, and reality. And that will be our downfall. But if we find the strength to slowly, step by step, recognize what is happening, both inside and outside, then we are opening pathway toward a much better world. We are opening pathway toward a collective consciousness awakening of humanity, a collective healing of humanity. And that could open so many amazing potential for our future. So it's in our hands. And we cannot make collective choices. We cannot make choices for the
Yeah,
collective,
exactly.
but we can make choices for ourselves. And the choices that we make ourselves
Yeah.
influence the collective.
Yeah, so true. It's everything starts by yourself, and and at the same time, by doing the work yourself, also think about how you can contribute as much as you can to the collective and make the most impact possible. Yeah, because it's really necessary. Yeah, it's a beautiful way, I think, to end this conversation. Maybe one last thing: what is the best way for people to reach out to you? How can people find you? The links will be shared here in the comments, of course. But for the audio, it's good.
Our website is newworldtogether.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Benjamin Casteillo. You can also follow me on Facebook. I'm truly inviting you to be curious and to learn more about yourself and the world we live in, because there's so much we can do if we become collectively a conscious species. And I'm really hoping that we will be able to see at least the premise of that in
Let's
my
hope
lifetime.
that, for sure. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for taking the time to share your story and the important work that you do. I really honor you for spending all those years and really are being dedicated for that important mission that you have. So I hope the audience can take a lot out of this, and makes people think, and it makes people take action as well, because I think that's really the most important, that people take action and really make a difference. So thank you very much for being here. Yeah, it's amazing to see how things have evolved over the years, and we definitely will stay in touch. And I see another episode coming up in the future as well. Now when we're in this time of transition, it's really interesting, I think, to get updates about this. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Things are going to continue to accelerate. So yes, we are on for a ride. So let's keep in touch. And thank you, Hank, for having me. It was a pleasure.